Hey everybody, welcome to the Kid Contractor. Welcome to the show, everybody. We are coming to you here from someone I would say is a friend, a pal, a buddy, and also sponsor of Together in the Trades, and even our Hardscape Mastery event we have here at the Hardscape Academy. And this year, one event at our home shop here in beautiful Fairfield County. And then the second event at Jeremy Swihart's office, his new facility out there in Centerville, Ohio, which is Dayton for all intents and purposes. Weston here is always a great conversation, has done some really cool stuff with his career, built a really great budgeting and estimating software called SynkedUP. And you folks know we're ardent supporters of LMN, but I first and foremost believe in people figuring out their numbers. And so if you go to SynkedUP, I don't care. If you go to LMN, awesome. But I want you first to know that, like, the most important thing to me and the purpose of this podcast in the big picture is to help people not make the same mistakes I did in my early years in contracting. And if only I'd had the right mindset and a software like SynkedUP or LMN and used it at the time, whatever, like, man, I know when we started using budgeting estimating software, how much that revolutionized our company and then our life. And so I'm totally happy having Weston on here. And he'll mention, I'm sure, SynkedUP a little bit too in here. Or maybe I'll just do the whole show on it. I don't know. We'll see. But but we've got a few things to talk about. Weston, with that intro, I know you've got a lot of other stuff and a lot of background. And I might even pick we're building a water feature next week or in 2 weeks. It's one of the more advanced ones I've ever do. So I might pick your brain a little bit on that.
There we go.
So we're going to cover some ground. Okay, Weston, all that being said, dude, give us your intro, how you want folks to know where you've been and what you're doing now.
Well, as I've kind of jokingly said before, I'm just a hillbilly crew leader from the hills of Pennsylvania that accidentally ended up starting a software company. But that's really my background. Is I worked at a company called Tussie Landscaping for 15 years. Started as a laborer on the crew and worked my way up to leading a crew, installing high-end outdoor living spaces, water features. Yes, you're right. I love building water features, and we actually won Artist of the Year at Aquascape in 2017. So that was a highlight that led to many cool opportunities, like building water features for people like Shaquille O'Neal. But back to business, we were, of course, going through the same bumps in the road that you described about the early days of figuring out how to know your numbers, what it means to know your numbers, what does it look like to know your numbers. And that led us to developing this app inside of Tussie Landscaping for a number of years, which I kind of took the lead on that project, and then eventually transitioned out of Tussie. And today I run SynkedUP, an estimating and job costing software to ultimately enable prosperity for contractors. That's why we do it. It's a big fat why.
Yeah, that's enable prosperity for contractors. Man, I love that. That's such a good way to put that, because folks, this is hard work. It's risky. The skill set that's needed is so broad that being profitable is something that's deserved. And SynkedUP is definitely something that helps people with that. What was there a deeper purpose or meaning to starting SynkedUP? Like, what was the final thing? I'm like, you know what? The heck with it. I'm doing it.
Yeah, there was that moment. Yeah. After we were hundreds of thousands of dollars to building something that we were questioning if it was going to be worth it. But basically, what the real story of what happened there is, we were your typical contractor, less than $1 million, barely making any money. I was just an employee, so that wasn't directly affecting me, but only indirectly. And I watched Steve and Matt, the owners of the company, and Derek and Dave, the two salespeople in the company, go to all kinds of seminars and learn about overhead recovery and what it means to build a budget. And we used spreadsheets and software and had challenges here and there with them. And you have to keep in mind that chronologically, I'm talking about a time 10 years ago. The software market is a lot more mature than it was then. Jobber had just come out, back then. So we were using Jobber, loved it for many reasons, logistically speaking, but it had no financial tools, right?
Right.
And so So
I want to
we're
hammer on that real quick because I ask people, hey, are you using budgeting or estimating software? Oh, I have Jobber. And again, Jobber's awesome at what it does, but folks, don't get it twisted. It does not help you understand your numbers.
yeah, it's not the
And
same
no
tool.
shade on Jobber, but it's not that. So yeah.
Yeah. I love, like, I still to this day, I love watching Jobber there. I have a lot of respect for them as a company and as a product, but they solve a different problem. It's not the same thing. Just because they are selling a software to landscapers and SynkedUP is selling a software to landscapers does not mean it's the same thing.
Yeah,
It's
that's
like,
so solid.
It's like saying I have a truck, but you have a dump truck and I have a Ford Ranger, you know?
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, that's solid. Okay. So I cut you off on a train of thought there. I don't know if you can dredge it back up.
Oh,
but,
yes.
So I'm
How
sorry.
we got started. So yeah, we were in this world of using software, having gaps in that software, struggling with the efficiency in our processes, having a lot of paper, a lot of manual stuff, a lot of double, triple, 4 times data entry for the same thing. And my dad had a telecommunications company that he sold, and the company that bought him out had a software development division. And I came home from work one day in the middle of this fight that I was just describing to you. And I saw him working on the back patio at one evening, clicking around some colorful graphs and stuff. And I was curious, and I was like, what are you doing? And he said, oh, I'm testing a software project. And I was like, wait, you mean you're just like building stuff and defining what you needed to do and the engineers were building it? It's like, yeah. So that's where the light bulb went on. And that's when I went back to Steve and Matt at the company, the owners of the company. I was like, dude, like, let's build this. And admittedly, that was the most naive thing I ever said. I had no idea what I was saying. But yeah, we started. And at first it was very much we're building a product to solve our own problem, an app to solve our own problem. And knowing what I know now, it does not make sense for a small couple $1 million company to build its own software. It is a miracle by the grace of God that we are still alive as a company with SynkedUP. And like, I would never recommend, like, until you're in the tens of millions in revenue, it does not, like, it takes full-time people that have dedicated their skill set and career to these things to develop a software. So if you think you're going to keep on doing your business and develop an app, like, pick one or the other. You can't do both. And that's exactly why I don't work at Tusky anymore. I full on run SynkedUP, and that transition happened 4 years ago. I clocked my last timesheet December, almost exactly 4 years ago, just next week, 4 years ago.
Wow.
At Tusky. So yeah.
Man, well, congrats on that. That's really something. And yeah, and that's there's a lot that can be said for distraction, period, right? And so I hear people say like, oh, I want to start a podcast, or, they're running like a semi-successful or whatever. I hate that word. Tell me what success is really, right? Like, right, was so what the heck is, or subjective, what really is success, right? But like running like what I would say is a successful construction business or a landscape design company or whatever. And it's like, we want to start a podcast, do social media, and like, careful, I don't know, man. Like, you got a good thing going. Like, don't lose focus. I kind of get like, because we built this thing somewhat by accident, whatever we have going here. And it's just like, but at the same time, like, I've never wanted a tattoo before. And I am close to getting this put on my arm somewhere, but it's a Latin phrase, quo pretio, and it's at what cost. It's like my favorite thing. Anytime we look at, and we have Together in Trades, we have Hardscape Academy and all this stuff. Like, it's like we've started all these things, and yet it somewhat degrades from other things we're doing, right? And now we're getting really good at delegating and hiring an admin and staff and stuff like that to help spread that out. But at first, it's like something suffers, something gains, and it's like I give, all my attention to Auman. Well, now the podcast suffers because I'm not taking time to schedule guests, and vice versa. And so, like, for you to just go and focus on the software is awesome, because that is, and by the way, that's such a monumental task. It's not the same thing as just starting a podcast, right? Like, I still don't even understand how the most basic of software, like, dude, it is such a mystical thing to me, like how everything we're looking at is ones and zeros. Like, what? You know what I mean? Like somehow that dictates everything we see around us. Like what, in a digital format, like whatever. That
It's true.
my brain does not compute that. It just makes, and how it knows to shift. It just dude, it blows my mind. And so like for you to
Yeah.
delve, were you somewhat savvy already with that or with like that
Well,
end of technicality or?
I can't code. So I would, by definition, I'm not a technical person because I can't code. But I did grow up around technology, and I think more where my passion or my ability lies is in observing a workflow or a problem or how something is done, and creatively coming up with ways to make that simpler, automating things, automating workflows. Like, let's not enter the same client 4 times into a spreadsheet, into Java, into, like there's ways to tie these things together. And like, I love imagining solutions to boring, painful, I hate doing this problems.
I think a huge thing is like anytime I catch myself saying there has to be a better way,
Yeah.
like that is something I need to delve into because chances are like whatever I'm doing and saying that is whatever I'm doing is antiquated, right? There is in this modern day, there's always I feel like an optimal way to do about anything, and I don't care what it is. And so to that effect, I always feel like if I catch myself saying like there has got to be a better way to do this, there generally is, and I need to do some research, right, and do some
Yeah.
due diligence, and then hunt up and find that better thing.
And
Yeah,
there's a balance because you don't want to over engineer something, but you
yeah,
also don't want to stay stuck in your rut. There's analysis paralysis personality types that totally fall into the rut of over engineering things. And I've been guilty of that in the SynkedUP journey. Like, oh, I'm going to over engineer this.
myself.
I'm so proud of how complicated this is. Complexity is not cool. Simplicity is cool.
Mm.
Right? So keep it simple, stupid is a mantra I love to live by. Like if there comes a point where the crushing weight of complexity overcomes the awesomeness of whatever output that thing can give you, and you go back to something that's a little less, a little more simple, maybe not quite as magic as you may feel it could be, but it actually gets done. Like you only want to engineer to the point where it's a process that can get followed, because the moment it doesn't get followed 100% of the time, it's useless.
Well, and so kind of talking about, you started a freaking software company 4 years ago. I'm guessing prior in your career, you were helping build up other companies. So you're working a ton, helping Tussie build. And so you're probably working a ton there. So this is where we touch on the podcast topic that we were given, but I think we're going to go heavier into the profit triangle you were talking about. But tell me what you've maybe learned twice over now, and even in the more self-employed space too, of like what the last 4 years have looked like as far as like you have a startup, which I think is the coolest thing to say, right? You've got a startup, right? But like what you've learned about, again, and I don't know, like I said, something so complex that you do with building a freaking software, the work-life balance thing, what's that mean to you? How have you begun hopefully to get that back on the rails? And again, you've been a sponsor at SynkedUP's been a sponsor at Together in Trades, and thank you so much for being part of that with us, and in Hardscape Mastery again too, folks. If you want to learn about Hardscape Mastery, www.thehardscapeacademy.com. By the way, too, huge thanks to Company Cam. I missed that in the intro, so shame on me. Hunter will have a little square down here of logo anyways, but huge thanks to them. Cycle CPA, let's see, your Steel Wrist, Lattice, JohnPidgeon.com, and our friends at Forward Coaching, by the way. So big thanks to those folks helping keep the wheels on this thing. So Forward is with Ken and Pat's coaching company, their local roots. They're not official sponsors. I just like those guys so much that
Yeah, they're awesome.
I give them I throw them a bone here because I believe in those guys so much. But so anyways, thanks to those folks for being part of our whole journey here. Okay, so having built a 4-year company now, or company 4 years into it, and built other companies up, I'm sure you're instrumental in that. What is time management, work-life balance, all that stuff? What's that look like to you? What's it mean?
Well, I'll start by saying I am far from perfect in this, but I love what you said about at what cost, because I think focus, the ability to focus and the ability to say no to things is overlooked. That is a skill that an entrepreneur has to have. If you don't, you are going to be addicted to the urgent instead of the important. and you're going to constantly be in a reactionary mode instead of living life by design. And going back to my time at Tussey, I started, let's just go back to say, 2010 to 2015. I was running a crew, but that was only work for 9 months out of the year. And I wanted to do more. Long story, but I wanted to make more money. And Greg Whitstock gave me the advice of where I had asked Greg at Aquascape, hey, are you hiring? Because I wanted more year-round work and more, a more stable career. And Greg at Aquascape was like, what's wrong with you? You're working for one of my best customers. Like, why are you asking for a different job? And he said, you go back and you ask the owner, Steve, what you can do to make the company more money so that you can make more money. And that was a big paradigm shift in my own journey, in my own career of like, oh, I've been looking at this all wrong. I was looking at it as an employee, just saying, I want more money. Of course, that's what every employee says. But like, no, let me adopt an owner mentality, an entrepreneurial mentality, and say, hey, how can I contribute more value to the marketplace, to the company I work for, so that I can grow? So anyway, that was a little bit of a tangent, but that me asking that question is really what kicked off a chain of events that led to this. Because what it did is I went from just running a crew to now also Steve basically said, hey, take over the marketing. We've struggled at this. We've never done well at it. Take over the marketing. And I did grow up around technology. So even though I can't code, I love using technology. I love implementing technology. I love making life easier with it. So I've been around it and I'm comfortable with it. And so I started, I built the website. I did started the YouTube channel, started all the Instagram, all the social media for it. And so I was basically working 2 full-time jobs, working a lot of hours. Like I remember, I don't know, maybe I'm a little weird, but I would get so sucked into my work. I remember missing a ball game on Memorial Day because I wanted to change something on the website quick, And so this was just my life at Tussey, running a crew and doing marketing. And in that kind of environment is where I got bit with this vision for SynkedUP as a software, not just to solve Tussey's problem, but I had the vision for it. It's not like Tussey's not unique. This is an industry problem. I want to solve this at the industry level. Let's take this and turn it into a company to serve the whole industry. So speaking of work-life balance, right there where I was basically working 2 full-time jobs, I was regularly working anywhere from 60 to 90 hours a week doing that crew leader marketing thing. On top of that, we kicked off the SynkedUP project, and I for about 2 years, 3-ish years, I would frequently, not daily, but frequently be getting up at 3 or 4 in the morning, working until I had to leave for work to be at the shop by 7. That was usually my SynkedUP time, and then working all day running a crew, coming home and working until sometimes, after midnight on whatever needed to be done. And this, again, I want to stress, this was not daily, but this was frequent. This was normal to me. And so when people want something, like you said, it's so cool to say you have a startup or whatever. When people want, it's easy to want the result. Most people aren't willing to pay the sacrificial cost. And so it's you have coming back to what you said about at what cost, because that did come at a cost for me, my family. We had 2 kids, I think, at this point. And hats off to my wife. She's a champion. Like the way that she, filled in the gaps or was patient, or the cold pizza thing. I don't know. The whole no more cold pizza thing where you miss dinner. That is a very real thing, and you have to ask yourself, is it really worth the cost? So I did, then we started the SynkedUP company, and I was, just to give you a picture of what that was like, I was no longer working at Tussey, yes, but now you got to start up, bootstrapping it. It's got a cash flow, payrolls. I was literally checking bank account balances on a daily basis, and knowing that if I didn't get a certain amount of demos or sales from a particular show, like we were done. And so we were operating on a shoestring for those first couple of years. And I was on the road for over 100 nights a year, those first 2 years. And it was excruciating. Sure, I was full of passion, still am, but it was coming at a high cost, is the point I'm trying to make. And so I Greg, this same guy that 10 years ago told me go ask the company what you can do to make the company more money, reached out to me. He was like, dude, he saw me what I was doing on social media. He's like, you gotta stop this. You gotta live life by design, not by reacting to the need or to the urgent that's in front of you. And he showed me how he was using this calendar, this annual one pager for like a calendar that had the whole year on one page. So you could kind of see, what am I spending my time on? And when I did that for the first time, like, yeah, it set me back. Like I knew I was busy and I knew I was gone a lot. I just didn't know how much.
Mm.
And so when I realized that I was away for, 100 nights a year, I was like, there's no way that I wanted to continue that, because it was putting an undue burden on my family, of course. And what good is business success if you're not winning at home? And so, I took that one pager calendar and I started, every time I would commit to a speaking gig or another event, I would plop it on there and watch that total nights away per year thing. And I had a goal of hitting 60 nights this year, 2024. And I actually, since I talked to you last, Caleb, I actually managed to shave a few things off of there, and I'm down to 54. So this year I'm on track to be away.
Well, if Together in the Trades, you said, again, presenting sponsor there, he said, we're aiming for 40 to 60 nights, I think it was. And so Brittany called you out on it. And I think we had a conversation and that's the great thing about Together in the Trades. We had a discussion about that, of like what the men heard in that group and what the women heard in that group.
The men heard 60, 70.
Yeah, I heard 60, 80. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But the women heard 40. And so Brett's like, so you've been home 40, so Brett's been giving you a hard time about that. It's funny, but that's a great thing. We talk about it together in the trades, that kind of stuff, whatever. But yeah, congrats on whittling that down, man. So that's awesome. Good for you. Is that see, this is the thing I wonder, like Greg came in, and Greg Woodstock's amazing. Follow him on any social channel, find him. They're out there, Aquascapes, all that. Aquascape, whatever. This is the thing I wonder, and it goes back to the quo pretio thing. Is it even possible to not do what you did for at least the first 2 years? Like, yeah, you learn what Greg told you year 3, but is it even actually a realistic thing to implement that year 1 of a startup business of any kind? You know what I mean? Is that just the price of admission?
I mean, the easy surface level answer is yes, I think it is the price of admission. But I do think that sometimes because of the fact that we're living reactionary and addicted to the urgent, and we're not planning and designing, I think we do sometimes make it or allow it to be worse than it has to be, right? But you're absolutely right. Like the startup years, those first 2 to 3 years are brutal, and there's definitely a price of admission to that. And so before you go off and start your own thing, just count the cost. There is going to be a cost. Are you willing to do what it takes? And if you are, hats off to you, go all in. But you can't do it halfway. But I think what can happen, and I think this is where I'm constantly fighting to not get sucked into this, is it can start to feel normal. And you can start to be an entrepreneur that's like addicted to the chaos, and you are fueling the chaos yourself, because you're like, well, it's harder for me to just delegate this to someone than for me to just do it myself. I can do it myself in 5 minutes. I'd have to take an hour to teach somebody else how to do it, if we allow ourselves to live in that reality, you will never break out of orbit, so to speak. You're always going to be caught in that vicious cycle. And I think that's the important thing. Going into it, you can say, yes, this is the cost of admission. Yes, it's going to be painful. Yes, there's going to be sacrifice, but you have to make that commitment to yourself that you're not going to allow that to be a permanent reality.
Dude, and Britt and I are reading together the Dan Martell book, At the Moment to Buy Back Your Time book, and one of the 3 things, I think he calls it assassins of time or business or something, I can't remember. Because one of them was like, you get addicted to chaos, and exactly what you were just mentioning there. That's ironic you bring that up. I want you to elaborate on this. This like hit me in the head here. Addicted to the urgent instead of the important. How do you break that? And that's kind of the
Well,
chaos thing too, I suppose.
it is the addicted to the chaos. It's like suddenly it feels normal to be responding to DMs and text messages and phone calls at all hours of the day and night. And when a client, I'll just give you a contractor example. When a new client reaches out to you and says, I want to do a job, you say, sure, when are you available? Instead of, sure, this is my next availability. When would you, so it's like, are you going to live with your life by reactionary mode or by design? And by design means I do consultations on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons from noon to 5 p.m. That's it. If you want to work with me, you pick a time in that slot. Not, oh, you're available tomorrow night at 8 p.m. I'll be right over. That's the difference.
When that is something we've started drawing the line, or no, we have drawn the line on, it is a rare exception that I'm going to meet with anyone. I mean, for me now, a late appointment's like 5:30, which is like, again, years ago, we've really gotten away from that, but it was still even like, I was way too accommodating with clients because I thought, we meet with them on their time and all this crap. And it's like an HVAC guy of all people, and not my father-in-law, but another guy around us, he said that it's best to make, and this is just his philosophy, and I don't disagree with it, but he's like, work with your client, but at the same time, it's not a bad thing for them to force them to take some time off work. It gets them more invested in the whole scenario. 100%. And it's like, wow. Yeah. And this was years ago, and I never thought about it that way. Cause I was trying to figure out, like, I was running my wheels off. We didn't have a great qualifying process yet. And, I'm like, should we charge just consult fees to start to weed some of this crap out? And it's before I realized, like, really what a conversation ahead of time, like a proper conversation can do to qualify your clientele base better. And so that was like, that was eye-opening to me. And so exactly what you're saying, like, 8 o'clock tomorrow, we're here to serve. It's like, we are here to serve, but we're not a lapdog, and we're not a, I'm struggling to find what I'm looking for, but like, we're not here to just be totally subservient either. Like, we're here to serve, but not in that way. We're here to provide a super quality service, but not at your just absolute whim, I guess maybe is a better way to put that.
Yeah. And my brain goes right back to what you said earlier about at what cost, because every time you do that, there is a cost to either your team or your family as well. So who are you going to serve first?
There is a, who are you going to serve first? That's such a good, man, this is great. This is great, Weston. Let's, one other note I mentioned, or I know I wrote another note here, just the addicted to the chaos thing, your life by design. I love that. Let's see. Oh, one thing I want to touch on, then we'll get to the profit triangle. When you were talking about Woodstock telling you to go back to Tussie and ask, how can I become more valuable to the company? Like, that is something as an employer, that's like fantasy, right? You fantasize about your team asking you that question, right? Like, so you being an employee at the time, I want to drill down on that, because like I have limiting beliefs, I guess, of like thinking that employees would ever even ask that thought or get that mentality. So that struck a chord with you. How do you suggest, or even maybe internally now within your company, your software company, because the same rules apply, you need your people to become ever more valuable, to raise the value of the company, to pay more and all that kind of stuff. Having been an employee at that point, is there any way you can help convey to an owner or a manager or whatever, how to pull that out of your team, or how to encourage that? Or what would aside from Greg telling you that, because you just happen to have like access to a super high level guy, how can an owner pull that out of their team to understand that's how they make more?
Well, I think that you should not assume that employees are going to think like an owner.
Absolutely.
They're not. I was not. So you should not assume that. Why don't they get it? Why don't they, that needs explained and laid out and communicated, and that comes through your leadership as the owner or the manager. And I didn't get it, right? I had to have someone tell me. And fortunately, I had, that encounter with Greg, like you said, a super high level guy that, had I not had that encounter, who knows where I would be today? I have no idea. But
fate is odd like that, isn't it?
Exactly. But what I think can be done at a practical level, okay, cool, I get it. What do I do tomorrow? I think what can be done is primarily through the lens of leadership and how you lead your people. Because if your people are frustrating you, that's a reflection of you as the leader. If you've ever read the book Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And if you've never read that book, you should go read it, and then this will start to make more sense. But like, I think what you can do is through leadership, through communication about what matters, what's important, and doing things like saying, hey guys, we all want to make more money and grow in our careers, right? Yeah. Okay, cool. For that to happen, this is coming from the leader or the manager. For that to happen, the company has to make more money. Okay, yeah, cool. I get that. Maybe I didn't ever think about it that way, but yeah, I get that. Like as an employee, all you think about, your processing stops at, I want to make more money. That's where my processing in my head was stopping. But the obvious next logical rationale is, well, for that to happen, the company has to make more money. Yep. Okay, cool. I'm following. I got it. Well, for the company to make more money, XYZ has to happen. You have to know your numbers. You have to be job costing, which means you have to be tracking time accurately. And we're not going to accept sloppy timesheets or no timesheets anymore. We're not going to run payroll based on what you said you worked. We need the actual timesheets, And so what I'm getting at is designing your messaging as a leader, designing ideally an incentive program or a bonus structure that is aligned with when the company does well, the employees also get a kickback. And that can look like beating hours on an estimate. It can look like when they upsell based on their suggestions to the client, whether we're on the job site. There can be all kinds of ideas you can do to foster that behavior from your employees that gives them an incentive or a kickback of some sort, whatever. You get to choose what that is. It doesn't have to be money. It could be time off, could be whatever. They get an incentive or kickback when the company wins money. And that comes from the top, like how you design those things, how you communicate those things, how you lead through those things. And at Tussey, there's a little bit more of an elaborate incentive program than just based on estimated versus actual hours. They look at it more at the overall year. So when they hit their break-even point, which comes from the budget, by the way, so if you're not budgeting, you're not going to know this.
Yeah.
This is why the top. When they hit their break-even point, there's a cash payout. Smaller, but there's a cash payout to all the team members for hitting the break-even. When they hit their sales goal, there's a bigger cash payout to all the team members. Any sales above and beyond the sales goal that gets produced in that year is a percentage of net profit. So basically, that's how they designed it for when the company wins, you win. Another way was but you can do it simpler, like just more like on a job-by-job basis, estimated versus actual hours. You decide whatever works for you. It's just important that the team understands it. It can't be Greek, or it won't work. And another thing that we did at Tussey, and this was awesome because I loved it. Any upsells that we did as a crew person on the job site, we got a percentage of. It was 2% of gross on anything hardscape or whatever, but lighting and water features, we got 5% because we had a higher profit margin baked into that. So the first thing I would do every time a job would get assigned to me is in the SynkedUP app, you could see any line items that were on the proposal that were rejected. So I could see any line items that the salesperson had tried to sell, but the client rejected. Like it could be upgrades, like lighting, kitchen, whatever, bubbling rock beside the patio, could be whatever. And so the first thing I would do is I would look at that and then accidentally on purpose suggest that exact same thing to the client after I had started the job, we saw it come together. And in my best year at Tussey, I sold over $300,000 worth of upsells just by making that a focus. And the company won and I won.
Yeah.
And so those are just examples of what does it mean? Like, how do you, I guess, foster this owner mentality and employees that may not naturally of their own arrive at this kind of thinking?
Yeah. That is awesome. And congrats on that, man. That's sweet on that at Tussey. The other element of this, aside from budgeting, is the accounting aspect is absolutely critical. And so if you're going to offer these kind of programs, you have got to have not only, again, control of your numbers and the budgeting and estimating and job costing into things, you have just got to be plain managing the cash. And so I really want to encourage you when you institute these programs, and if you don't come through on them, your trust is shot to the team, and you might as
Yeah.
well just fire everybody and start over because they'll never trust you again with any of this stuff.
Yeah.
And
That's
so
why I like
be
to do.
careful.
That's why I like to keep it KISS, keep it simple, stupid. Something you can do easily. You can explain simply. The team gets it. It's not, doesn't feel like a black box. They don't understand how you arrive at this equation or this number. It has to be something they understand, or it's going to actually have the reverse negative effect.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It'll be a disincentive at that point. Yeah,
That's right.
We're 35 minutes already. Good grief. Do you have time to go over the profit triangle?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, okay, buddy, go.
Well,
what's the premise of it?
Yeah, so the profit triangle, how I got to this is, obviously at SynkedUP, we see tons and tons and tons of companies build their budgets, win and make good money, lose and make not so good money. And I've come to the point where I've synthesized it down to two things in my own mind and how I view it. This is the framework with which I view it. So ultimately what I'm saying is there are ultimately two ways that contractors lose profits. There's two profit killers. And then I've visually made it into what I call the profit triangle. At the top of the profit triangle, the peak is the profit. At the bottom corners are the two profit killers. One is math. The other one is resources. And I'll explain what I mean. You could really replace those math and resources terms with budgeting and job costing as well. And what I mean by that is if I'm losing money on a job, it's either because I did not calculate the math correctly. I had more overhead than I had calculated. I had more direct costs than I had calculated. Something is wrong in my math and my overhead recovery and my markups. Something is out of date or wrong in the math. And often, like statistically, contractors, when they build their first budget, realize that they have 10 to 20% more overhead expenses than they realized they had, than they were aware they had. So usually that's where it is. The resources side is where I could have perfect on paper math, but if I bid a patio at 100 hours and it takes me 150 hours to complete it, what happens? I lose money, even though I had perfect on paper math, right? So both have to be in place for you to have predictable profit. A, I got to have the math dialed in. B, I got to have the resources in the estimate dialed in. I have to, and that's where job costing comes in. Like job costing shines a bright spotlight on where I was over or under on any resources, labor, materials, equipment, subcontractors. Labor is the hardest one because materials and equipment and subcontractors typically are much more visible. You're paying a vendor, you're paying material, like you're paying transactions, so they're very visible. What is tough to track on the labor end, what is visible is the transaction of debited out of your bank account to cover payroll. What's not visible is what percentage of that payroll was unbillable, went to this job versus that job, and that's why it's so critical to track time to a job. If you don't know what job it went for, you're lighting cash on fire because you don't know where that went. And so the whole profit triangle is, yes, there's hundreds of ways to lose money in a contracting business, but ultimately they roll down to A, either there's something wrong on the math end, B, there's something wrong on the resources end. Even if it's like, you're like, well, what about if I'm not getting the ROI that I need on marketing? Well, apparently you don't have that calculated correctly in your budget, which bleeds through to a math problem, So you're not getting the leads you need to sell the jobs off of that marketing expense. So you need to adjust your marketing spend in your budget to accommodate that so that the math can be corrected against reality.
Holy cow. That's so good, man. And it's the unfortunate thing is it's like it's that easy and it's also that freaking hard. And,
exactly.
Like tracking all of that is a big deal. But that stuff is when you figure that out, how important that is, you actually just do everything Weston said here. Like when you actually start focusing on that, that's what then separates the successful contractors, financially successful, let's say, from just struggling and not being able to afford to put tires on the truck. Like that's a big deal. And making sure that, again, I saw a contractor's truck the other day. The tires are just worn out. Hell, to be frank, one of our trucks that looks that way too. I better watch my mouth. I just haven't got around to changing them out. We got a couple bucks. We can actually change them out. Just taking the time to do it. Whatever, send somebody down the tire shop. But the reality is, like, we know that $800 or goodness knows what it costs now, $1,100 to put tires on that thing. Like, we know that's built into the budget every year of like a certain amount of just recurring maintenance on vehicles and things. And man, once I started thinking about stuff that way, it just totally changed. I started looking at jobs, and it's like, man, that's all. You look at what your cost of goods is. Your plants and mulch and dirt and some rocks, whatever. Like,
Yep.
and then you see the number to break even. It's like, well, that's a long distance. Like, really? And then you're like playing this game of like, well, we could really lower that because there's the cost in there. No. If you build your budget half worth of crap, no, that is what puts tires in the truck. That is what pays for company outings and pizza parties and buying everybody Red Bulls and like all that stuff is what's beyond, just your cost of goods on the project. And when I started really understanding that, man, my financials in our company started just dramatically changing. And then when I understood the importance of having someone really manage the financial end of it on the accounting end, which we have our friends at Cycle do for us in a fractional CFO standard. Man, this has been the most enlightening year and the best. Again, folks, promo code Auman. I'm a shameless shill for them now. But like what they're doing for us in a fractional CFO world, we have again 25 years in business, Weston. I'm embarrassed of this, but like this year I've never had such good idea and control and cash flow projections of our financials ever.
Mm-hmm.
Now that we have like someone actually that's all they do. And again, on a fractional, again, like a part-time basis, because we're not that big a company, so it doesn't take a ton of time. But like having a cash flow report instead of just going off the gut feeling of like, man, we got billing out late this month. Next month's gonna suck, Just knowing in a gut or a visceral feeling of knowing just finances are gonna suck next month. No, now we know. No, it's like, oh yeah, I got billing out late. Next week's gonna be a little suck, or next month's gonna be a little sucky. Now, granted, fortunately, we're not in the monthly billing thing anymore of that world, but I would automate it with things. Again, that's where Jobber is awesome, right? Like they've got a great billing process and all that crap. But I know Element does, and I know SynkedUP does, or I'm pretty certain you do anyhow, right?
Yeah.
So like, that stuff exists in these more broad softwares, which I'm borderline evangelical for now these days. So, okay, Weston, 42 minutes. What else of the profit triangle? Let me ask you this, because we'll start to land the plane here. This is a question I like to ask. So it's a little left field, but on the software end of things, what is a misconception or a fallacy you had about when you launched SynkedUP of what you thought owning a software and starting a software company was going to be like, and then what it really turned out to be? And this can be good or bad. What's like a misconception you had that was like, oh wow, man, misgauge that?
I would say building a product is very different than building and cash flowing a company. Like I thought that, I just dramatically underestimated how difficult it would be. Like, I mean, on a scale of 1 to 100, I thought it would be a 1 for how easy it was, and it would be, and it was 100. Like I had no idea, and so like thinking like, oh yeah, dude, like Jobber doesn't do this or blah blah blah. They don't do that, and that, that's easy. I don't know why they don't do that. We're gonna do it. That's very naive thinking, and so that was a misconception. Was like, this will be easy. Like we know better because we've lived it. Having the idea is arguably the easy part. Building it in such a way that somebody that's never seen it before understands how it works and can figure it out and uses it is a completely other animal. Like it's like we joke around sometimes when we're designing products in our own internal meetings, like, dude, we should bring a psychologist on board so we understand the human brain, right?
Yeah.
To get people to do these things. Yeah.
That has some merit. I mean, really.
Because really, at the end of the day, we know we want to do job costing, so we can do job costing. We have to get people to track time, but we're also getting people to track time that probably don't really care about the broader picture like the owner does. So how do we design a product that gives them a feedback loop or something that they care about? So that's what I mean by that, is like, it's way more than just going from idea, hiring some engineers overseas and telling them to code, slap it together. The other thing I learned is I was wrong about a lot of things. Usually the initial idea, you're probably wrong in about 9 out of 10 angles of it. The market is ultimately what's right. And the market doesn't care what you think. Either it's either the market's going to adopt it or it's not. And so there's many things that we built in the early days of SynkedUP that we're now deleting or redoing or in phase 2 of, because my initial concept was just dead wrong. And that's kind of where I'm getting at, is complexity is the enemy, simplicity is your friend.
Yeah.
Because complexity, what it does is it constrains you. It prevents you from achieving what you want to do because of all those constraints. Like, anyway, those are some things. And the other thing I would say is I did not realize, to me in the beginning, I was excited about building a widget, a better app, a better whatever. I completely underestimated the mission or the why behind it that I embody and am so passionate about today. What I mean is I got into it passionate about building a better mousetrap. Today, I'm passionate about the outcome that it produces for our customers, these companies. Like, it's literally life-changing for them. Like, they go 180. They go from making no money to buying new trucks, paying themselves, and still having money. And I've had spouses of the owners of the companies come up to me and, borderline be emotional, thanking us for what SynkedUP has done for their business and their family life. And that kind of connects back to the whole work-life balance thing we were talking about. But yeah, I totally had the conception of I'm building a better mousetrap, to now it's like the mousetrap is the vehicle. It's the mission and what we're the outcome, that the transformation that we're producing. That's the North Star.
Yeah. Oh, that's great, man. I love that. To that effect, Caterpillar ran an ad years ago. It's still stuck with me. I thought it was such a great ad of essentially to paraphrase it was, buy Caterpillar equipment because of reliability. So you'll be home at night, not fixing, machines instead. And it was just like, I'm paraphrasing, but that's what they were saying in the ad. Yeah. It was like, man, that's solid. That's such a good ad. Like, that's such a good thing. And I just like that. So I like that you're going that route with what you do, because it is, once you begin and once and you start that journey of knowing how to recover your costs. In other words, getting your clients to pay for your expenses, which is the idea of business.
Yes.
Once you go down that road, man, life changes for the better. It's really, really something.
You're not pulling a wad of cash out of your pocket that you thought was yours and paying for business expenses. That's wrong. Your client is paying for any expense that you feel your business needs. So whether you think you need software, whether you think you need a tilt rotator, whether you think you need a fractional CFO, cycle CPA, it's your client paying for it. It's up to you as a salesperson to close the deal at the price required to pay for those things.
Yeah. And it's not to pay for a boat on the lake, because if your company gets too fat, again, the market will tell you, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you're not delivering the value equivalent to what you're charging, the market will tell you, and they will say, you don't look premier enough to charge that price, or you look like you're way undercharging, so I'm going to take advantage of that too, right? Like, and so the market will tell you also, like, oh, dude, I've booked like every single lead we get. And like, yeah, you may look at your numbers, buddy. Like, it's not because you're such a great salesperson. I about guarantee that. Weston, thanks so much, dude, for a couple things. Sponsoring Hardscape Mastery. We look forward to that coming up. Folks, I don't have the dates off the top of my head here, but again, this you'll probably be sponsoring the one at Jeremy's shop, I'm going to presume, in January. And that one's in early March or super late February. I can't remember. That's how bad a host I am. But thehardscapeacademy.com, folks, to find out on that. That's an incredible event. It's different. It's way deeper dive than we don't talk about construction hardly at all. It's about business mastery. And
I will say as a plug, I go to a ton of events. That Hardscape Mastery event that we did early this year was awesome. I think that was the best business event that I've been to in this industry. Like just the depth of the information and
Wow.
the what I think is like the absorption rate, or whatever you want to come up with, the take rate of the people that went there and didn't just listen to self-help content, but the delivered in such a way that they could go home and implement. Like it was an awesome, powerful
Yeah.
event.
Well, and I would say part of that is because you were a sponsor of one of those, and like we asked people, how many people here have budgeting and estimating software, and like barely any of the room did, and we're like, freaking pause, everyone stop. You're a hardscape master event, and we don't even know this stuff. We have got to we got to change what we're talking about today, because like we've got to get down that road, and we got a bunch of people, looking at SynkedUP that day because we're that adamant. Like that's where good business starts. There's so many things, right? Like good, you got to be working on yourself and bettering yourself always. And
Yep.
you got to budget and job costs and all that stuff. But we're like, holy smoke, we're gonna pull back and start there, and then build up from there on the conversation for the 2 days. Really great event. We'll have a whole podcast talking about what we do there, folks. So look for that coming up here. But thank you for being part of that. Thank you for being again part together in the trades.
Yeah.
That's a super great thing that we put on there. That is coming up in Charleston or Savannah, Georgia. Sorry, here coming up this summer. So go to togetherinthetrades.com for that. Weston, last chance here. Tell folks where to find you and what you do and all that stuff.
Yep, absolutely. So just go to synkedup.com. It's spelled with a K, SYNKEDUP.com. And you can find out all kinds of information there. You can book a demo there if you want to see how it works and get on a call with an actual live person. There's a bunch of free resources there as well. Like we have man-hour calculators, production rate calculators, free budgeting tool, all on the website in the free tools section. And if you want to reach out to me directly, I'm most active on Instagram. So just DM me on Instagram and we'll get a conversation going.
Awesome. Weston, again, thank you so much, dude. What is, here we are ahead of Thanksgiving. What does your weekend look like here?
I'm going to have my one brother, my one sister that are local come over. They're going to be over at our house here tomorrow. My parents are actually in Bangladesh right now for like a 6-month mission trip.
Whoa, cool.
Yeah, so they're not around. But yeah, we're going to get together, maybe shoot some clays tomorrow afternoon with my cousins. And yeah, so it's going to be, what Thanksgiving should be. Friends and family and good times.
Oh, dude, that's wonderful. Well, I hope you have a great day. I wish you the best, and happy Thanksgiving. Weston, again, thank you so much, dude. I really value any chance we get to talk, and I really wish you the best with SynkedUP and everything moving forward in the future ventures, everybody. Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. All right, folks, from the Company Cam Studios here in beautiful Fairfield County, Ohio. Everything we talked about today, I can't stress enough how important all that stuff is. So maybe re-listen to this, take some more notes down, and maybe act on some things you should get on. We'll catch you on the next one, folks. We'll see you.